Hi, and welcome to our overview of NetSupport School version 11. As you can see on the screen in front of us, we have the NetSupport School tutor or teacher component running on our screen, and in addition we can see a number of student computers listed within the main display area. During this presentation, we'll take you through all of the key features and functions available within the NetSupport School program, as well as how the configuration options available both on the tutor and on the student side to ensure that you leverage maximum performance and benefit within your ICT training suites. Before we start using some of the features and functions and start a brand new lesson with our students, let's take a few moments just to cover the main layout of the teacher component of NetSupport School. As you can see, the screen is broken into three key areas. At the top of the screen, we have our main toolbar, providing us with simple one-click access to all of the main features within NetSupport School. Running down the left-hand side, we have all of the components that are available. Each one, as we select, will jump to a different mode, and again we will cover these individually as we progress through our tour. And finally, the main view area where all of our relevant student information will be displayed on screen for us throughout the lesson. Okay, let's start at the very beginning by ending our class and starting a new one so that we can work through the steps and options that are available to us. So let's end our class, and you'll see we're presented with a new class wizard. The new class wizard will automatically record the relevant information for my teacher name and my lesson title, and of course this can be revised on the fly. We also have an option here to include lesson objectives and outcomes, something that most organisations will be familiar with as the current viewpoint on educational standards. Okay, and as if by magic, we've got some lesson objectives now that have been added. We can also choose whether this is an open lesson or whether we want to have a lesson timer displayed. Below this area we have a connection window, and in most cases in a classroom the same connection method will be used over and over again. But there are occasions where different means of connecting to students are required, and NetSupport School provides 4 different options. Let's have a look at our new connection option, and you'll see we're presented with our startup modes. There are 4. The first is room mode, and we'll cover each one individually so that there's full clarity. With room mode, both the teacher and student PCs can be configured to reflect a particular room name. If the student computer starts and the NetSupport student is selected as room 1, then they will automatically connect to a teacher with the same room mode. On this point, multiple rooms can be used, so of course a teacher could monitor not only students in one classroom, but perhaps view machines in a second classroom as well if they're providing cover for a lesson. In PC mode, NetSupport simply allows us to create a list of computer names and automatically connect to each of the PCs within that list at the start of each lesson. In user mode, the same approach applies, but instead of PC names, we can now produce a list of network users and automatically connect to each of those students based on their logon name at the beginning of each class. Particularly useful if you have mobile students joining a class with their own hardware and you simply want to maintain a list of which students you would expect to be present in each of your lessons. And finally, browse mode, which does as it suggests. It simply allows us to browse the network and select which students we wish to connect to at any given time. Again, all of these modes can be accessed at any point, but in a typical classroom you will pick the startup mode that suits your requirements, and that most likely is the mode that you will automatically use each and every time. In this case we've got one room already defined. The name is room 1, so that's what we're going to use, and you'll see it has a tick to reflect that it's our default mode. You'll also notice that we have a power management option at this point, so we could also turn on all the computers in our given room. We also have the option here to create a journal and a register. We'll come in detail to the student journal. This in essence is a digital record of all activities during the lesson, content that is used by the teacher and students, and provides a fantastic resource at the end of a lesson for students to take away and be aware of all of the content that they utilised. Similarly, our student register allows us to prompt each of our students for additional information. It may be their name information, it may be confirmation of their student enrolment number, or any other custom fields that are required. In this case here, we'll create a journal, but we've already got some names defined, so let's just go ahead and start our lesson. We're now finding computers in room 1, and as you'll see, we magically now have our room available. The first thing the system has asked us to do is to add some extra information for the start of our student journal that we'll be building in background throughout the lesson. So we've got our lesson title, we've got a class, 4C, they're in room 1, and our objectives for the lesson are to cover the solar system and learn about the planets. Let's say OK to that, and you'll see we're now live and ready to go. So with all our students available in the classroom, we can now work our way down some of the key features that are available to you using NetSupport School. Let's jump to number 2 tab, and you'll see we have our interactive monitoring mode. We now have access to see all of the computers within the classroom, and we can see in real time the activity that each student is undertaking. Looking at the base of the screen here, you'll see we can control the size of the thumbnails, or use the auto mode to ensure that all active students fit within our display window. We can also choose to overlay any information about active applications or websites that are being viewed by our students, and we can enable a quick zoom in mode. Let's turn zoom in mode on and mouse over Matt Jones, and you'll see instantly we get a real-time thumbnail showing us that computer. Again, an additional resource allowing us to keep an active eye on each and every student. Let's move back, and we'll turn zoom in mode off for the time being. So here's our quick summary of our students in the classroom, and this is typically how a teacher will leave their PC whilst they're walking around the room or just keeping an eye on activity as it progresses during the lesson. For the purpose of this tour, we're going to try and cover all of the key features that are used within NetSupport School, with perhaps a particular focus on some of the unique features that you perhaps might not expect to find within a classroom management product. But we ought to also acknowledge some of the key staple components that you would expect to find. So, we're talking to our students in the class. At the beginning of the lesson, I want to ensure that their attention is focused square in front to me. So very quickly, I can use the lock function to disable the keyboard and mouse on each student PC and ensure that they all focus on the information I'm providing to them. So selecting the lock button, you'll see that very quickly all of the students have updated and locked. Now of course the thumbnails we have here, we can set the interval that those update. So typically it will take a few seconds for the thumbnail to update with that lock information, although it actually happened instantly on each of the student PCs. Now I can deliver an instruction to the class about some of the things we're going to cover, and of course once we've finished I can then release and unlock all of their screens. So what might be the typical format of a lesson? Well, perhaps to start with, what I want to do is show my students how to do something on their computer, and then subsequently we're going to follow and watch them perform the same steps themselves, and then towards the end or the plenary we may want to test them and gauge their level of understanding. So let's follow that as a basic framework and identify some of the key features. The first feature we can talk about is our show mode. And the show mode in NetSupport School allows us to show the teacher's desktop to all of our students in real time so that we can provide full one-to-one instruction to each and every student. As you see, we've got a range of show options. The first is very simply, click on show and our screen is transmitted to all of the student computers. The next, show video, allows us to show a video that's played on our machine across to all the class, and this video can be delivered to each computer in background automatically and synchronized to ensure that everybody is seeing and hearing the same information at the same time. The next option says show replay, and replay files are a component created by NetSupport School. In essence, I can record a remote control session and save that session as a replay file on my computer. That replay file I can then use in subsequent lessons, automatically prepared to play back and deliver as instruction to my students. In version 11 we also add a replay file converter, which allows us to take those replay files and output them in a range of standard multimedia formats. Finally, we have our show application, which allows us to select a specific application on our desktop and show just that across to each of the students. Perfect if we want to keep their focus but walk them through some of the basic steps, perhaps in creating a spreadsheet table. We also have exhibit mode, and in exhibit mode we're able to select an individual student and show their screen to the rest of the class. Perfect for one level of peer assessment, but also a quick way to show students how another student has managed to achieve the desired outcome quickly and effectively. In the case here, you can see from this one menu we can select the student here that we want to exhibit, and that will then automatically be shown to each of the students. We also have some extra options here. Audio allows us to enable audio during the show mode so that the individuals can hear the sounds on the local PC. We can change the display mode from full screen to windowed mode depending on your requirements. We can create a replay file of our show, so when we decide to present to our students how to create a table in our spreadsheet application, we can record that, and then we'll be able to use that as part of our lesson resources for future classes. Okay, for the purpose of this presentation, it's not very visually meaningful to perform a show as you can't see each of the individual students, but I think we've covered the main features there to give you an idea about what is available. Okay, so we've done our presentation and we've shown the students what we expect them to do. The next part of the exercise will be for the students to undertake the work themselves. Now, as part of this process, we may well want to send the students some files for them to actually use as a template for their coursework. And for this approach, we have a number of options available again. We have a traditional mode of file transfer and file distribution. And file distribution, if we pop and open the window, simply allows us to select files on one PC and automatically deliver them to a predefined folder on each and every student computer. And we can of course control the destination folder and ensure that every student receives the file that they want. Now, file distribution is a great tool for getting information from the teacher machine to all the students as quickly and as effectively as possible. However, quite often within the lesson environment, what we actually want to do is not only send files out, but also collect them as well. And the send and collect work feature in NetSupport allows us to create a file, deliver it to each student. When the student has finished working on that file, we can automatically collect the files back to the teacher machine, appending the student information to each file name for post-lesson review. In version 11 of NetSupport School, we can also monitor in real time and see the progress of those files and when they've been completed. Okay, so let's have a quick go at creating one. So we can say next for our send and collect work, and we can choose the document we want to send. This is our example lesson. And we can also choose which folder we want to deliver that document to at the student. Let's make it easy and say the desktop. You'll see we've got some extra features here, or configuration options, where we can choose to empty the folder before we send files to it, or similarly we can remove the files once we collect them back from the student. We can then specify where do we want to receive those files once we bring them back from the student. We'll keep it easy for today and just put it straight back onto our desktop, and we're going to use the subfolders based on the student name. So if I send my file out, once I collect it, within that folder there'll be an individual subfolder for each and every student, and their work will be automatically delivered for us right there. Next thing is we've got a text description. Let's put something very simple in there for our example, and you'll see we've now got example work ready to send. And when we go to send our work, we can send them to all the students, or we can send them to specific clients. So maybe within this list here, we can look down the list and we can just choose individual students that we want to send them to. Let's perhaps choose this one. And for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to just send it to the one computer because I think it will be easier for us to see the outcome quickly and easily. So let's say OK. and that information has now been sent to that student. So let's close that down for now. The information's been sent, and we'll see we have a status report here which will allow us to see when anything has been updated on that student PC. You'll see as if by magic that student Alexander Biggins has now completed the work and marked so on their student toolbar, another feature we'll cover shortly. So as a teacher we know that all the students have finished their work, and we can return to our send and collect work component, select the identified document and collect the work. We'll collect the work from either the individual students or those that have been selected. Off we go, and you'll see the documentation has been returned to my desktop in a subfolder, Alexander Biggins. Right, back to our real-world example. We have our class of students. We've shown them and instructed them on how to perform a task. We've now delivered files and, where appropriate, collected them back from the student. And now we want them to go away and undertake some work on their own. So the next step is for us to have a look at some of the monitoring and control features available in NetSupport School. And then we'll round that process off by looking at some of the testing and assessment tools available. So in terms of some of the monitoring features we could utilise during the lesson, depending on the content, NetSupport School includes an audio monitoring capability. As we can see now, each of these students have some visual indicators to tell us when their microphone is detecting any audio, and similarly their headphones. So if we think about that in practical context, if a student is using a PC for some form of language lab training or assessment, as soon as they speak into their microphone, NetSupport School would detect this information and display it against the icon. Similarly, if the student was listening to an audio stream, that would be indicated against the headphone icon. As a teacher, we can simply select a PC, and as we see at the bottom here, we have the ability to listen to the activity that's happening on the student. We can also mute any of the sounds we're receiving. We can speak audibly to one or selected students. We can also control the volume levels on the student computers as well as our own to ensure nobody risks damaging their ears. So the audio monitoring allows us to move NetSupport School from a visual monitoring and instruction tool to a true language lab solution. Of course, one of the problems is that when I'm listening to a student, I might want to record what they're actually doing. And at the point where I actually hear that that student has said something noteworthy, it's a bit late to then press the record button. So working like a television DV recorder, at the point where NetSupport School is monitoring audio, it always keeps a recorded stream of the previous 60 seconds. So at the point where you select record, you will ensure that anything that's occurred in the previous minute will automatically be added to that audio stream. It's a great way of you capturing students for good or bad pronunciation or other phrases that they're using during a language lesson, and are able to then save that information to play back and share with other students. We also want to be able to control what our students do or don't do on the internet, and there are times during the lesson where the internet perhaps isn't appropriate, and there are other times where it is a key part of student research and undertaking. So let's have a look at some of the internet controls that we have available. You'll see at the top of the screen we have a quick access to control internet restrictions, and we have an unrestricted mode, an approved only mode, a block restricted websites mode, and a restrict all. Clearly in restrict all mode, all the students, in this case we've selected student Matt Jones, have their internet access well and truly removed. In the main view you'll see we have two lists. We have approved websites and we have restricted websites. And the concept is that a teacher can either manually add or call up a predefined list of approved websites that are relevant to their specific topic and lesson, and therefore deliver only access to those sites to their students. Let's add a few URLs to our listing. Okay, I've magically added a few approved and restricted websites to the list. Now you'll see with these lists here, we can now enable approved only or block restricted sites for one or all of our students. So with all of our students deselected, by applying approved only, you'll see the students get a visual indicator against their icons, and now the class can only visit the listed websites. Similarly, if we jump to block restricted, you'll see they can now visit any website except those that we've identified within our restricted list. Simple way of toggling between the three states. We also have a safe search mode, which prevents users when they visit search engines from accessing any search criteria or results that are not listed as being moderated. In essence, with safe search enabled, whenever a search engine is opened, NetSupport School will force it into its moderated mode. We can also block FTP access to sites to ensure that students don't accidentally or intentionally access FTP sites where data and files can be downloaded. Of course, these approved and restricted lists aren't just there as a control mechanism. We can now select an approved website, and if that's part of our lesson content, I can now right click and I can send that website to all of the student computers. So from that point of view, it becomes a quick access list, allowing us to launch resources. If you remember at the beginning of our lesson, we chose to enable a journal, and you'll see at the bottom toolbar here it lets us know we have a current journal running for 4C Science. I'm going to actually add now the notes here to my journal of all the approved websites. That's done. We'll come back and see the journal in due course, but we now have that information presented to all the individual student computers. Okay, one final part looking at our website management is that we have an option from our main menu that allows us to create lists of approved and restricted websites, load existing ones and save them. We can of course manually jump to this option here rather than using the main toolbar. We can also allow access for a given period of time, as well as set central policies, and more importantly we also have a full history for safeguarding of each PC, the web page they went to and the URL at any given time, and we can view that for all or selected computers, and again we're recording the login details of each individual student so that we're aware who went to which website at any given time. This information can then be saved or exported. You'll notice some of our students here, Gethin, Ditta and Alexander, are currently on the NetSupport School website, and you'll see, as well as a very useful pop-up tooltip, we've also got an icon overlay showing that Gethin and Ditta are currently on this given website. We can also right click and jump to a details mode, and in details mode again you'll see that we currently can show the current website being viewed by any given student, as well as any other websites that are loaded and minimized at the current time. So between the two modes we have a very quick and easy way of having a monitoring of all activity that's being undertaken by our students on the web. If we jump back to our thumbnails, and here they all are, you'll see at the beginning we mentioned we could also overlay website information. So now I've done that, you'll see on these computers we've now got a very nice clear indicator that they're on a current web page, and equally the green highlight shows that that's a website that's been detected as being an approved site. And again over here we have the same for Alexander. So even though we might remain for much of the lesson on our monitoring display, NetSupport will feed through the key information about websites and applications onto this view at any given time. Perhaps one final roundup though, this is also worth mentioning, is that internet access, as well as being from a research point of view, could also be used as a reward within the lesson when students have finished undertaking their work. So let's have a look at one of our students here, Ditta. We'll select him, and from our web menu we're going to allow him to have access for a limited time. So we're going to give him 10 minutes worth of unrestricted access on the internet because he's finished his coursework whilst the rest of the class is still continuing. Once we do that, you'll see that alongside the icon we now have an indicator as to how long is remaining for Ditta's internet access before he returns back to the same state as everybody else in the classroom. Again, we offer extreme levels of granularity within our settings here, but at the same time, and this is probably key for a new teacher using NetSupport School, all of these features and functions can be set by default so that you don't need to actually enter this area at all during a lesson. If you have a predefined list of approved or restricted websites, or perhaps by default just simply want the internet blocked, that can be set as a startup mode in NetSupport School and will automatically be enabled when the lesson begins. So the teacher then has no need to come into this specific area unless they wish to change any of those specific settings. Okay, moving on in our tour, we now have our application metering and control. One thing you'll quickly see within NetSupport School is that for each of the individual modules, we ensure we have a consistent approach to how we manage approved and restricted applications or websites or other resources, so that once you're familiar with one component, you'll find it very easy to navigate and utilize the other features. In the case of application metering, you'll see we have our class again, and we have 3 students who clearly have an application currently active on their computer, Internet Explorer, and we very conveniently show the application icon on the left hand side of the student icon so that you can see which application is running quickly and easily. In the case here, you'll notice the Internet Explorer icon is slightly different. That's because these 2 computers are Windows 7 and this computer is Windows XP, so they're running a slightly different version of Internet Explorer. Down the bottom, as we had with our internet, we have our approved applications and our restricted applications. These can be added manually, or predefined lists can be opened and applied on the fly. And again, not only do we have our list of applications, but if we select an individual student, Alexander, and we want Notepad to run, we can simply send that to the selected student, and you'll see instantly that we've got a visual indicator to let us know that Alexander is now using that particular application. Using the same concept as internet, if we jump back to our thumbnails and we choose to show here our applications as well, you'll see that we now have showing alongside Alexander on the left hand side his current active application as well. Over here with Ditter and Gethin, you'll see on the left hand side we have the application that's active, Internet Explorer, and on the right hand side we have the icon showing which website is currently active. Again, exactly the same as behavior as we'd expect from our internet control. We have an applications menu at the top now where we can show a full history of applications by individual student or the class. We can set our modes of application control, and where needed we can also remotely kill all the applications on each target computer. Following the same theme as the internet control, although we have the ability to customize these settings during the lesson here, we can set a default mode for application restriction, and that can be applied on startup, removing the need for the teacher to visit this area unless they wish to make specific changes. You'll see at the bottom we have our 3 modes of application control. Allow all applications to be used, only allow approved applications to be run, or simply block restricted applications from use within the classroom. As simple as that. As we're focusing on the classroom control options at the moment, let's jump down to our printer management, and you'll see we have our students within the classroom and we have a list of printers that are currently available. Just the same concept again, we have the ability to pause or block or provide unrestricted print management within the classroom. If a student prints, we have the ability to detect those in the print queue, and we can either pause them or we can set them for review before we release those prints through. You'll also notice we have a delete duplicates option, which ensures that if a student sends a document through more than one time in close succession, the system will recognise that and prevent the extra copies of coming through. For many schools, the cost of printing and consumables is considerable, and so NetSupport School provides a very simple mechanism for ensuring that only approved prints are sent out, and where appropriate perhaps the colour printer is disabled for this lesson where the teacher is happy that black and white printing is more than sufficient. Okay, moving on from print control, we also provide control of the CD drive and the USB sockets on each individual PC. So we have our class of students, they're working in the classroom, perhaps they're working on some tests, and therefore we don't want students having access to resources they perhaps have brought into school on a memory stick. So you'll note with our USB control we can provide unrestricted access, read-only access, so we can look at documents on the memory stick but not copy them, or we can simply block access altogether. Similarly, we can control whether applications stored on a memory stick can be run at any given time. Not only is this a useful way of protecting content within the school environment, but it's also a very useful part of your endpoint security in preventing unapproved applications entering the school infrastructure. The same applies for our control of the CD and DVD devices on a computer. Again, we maintain our level of consistency, just the same as our internet and application and printer control. We can apply a default policy for our USB and CD-ROM access, which applies as soon as the lesson starts, and avoids the need for the teacher to come back to this section during the lesson. We also have our keyword monitoring, and our keyword monitoring can both be used in a curriculum sense to ensure that students are on task, but can also be used as an additional layer of safeguarding within the classroom. So given that our lesson is on the solar system, let's add or pull up a predefined list of target keywords that we're hoping our students are going to incorporate within their comprehension. Okay, so we've now magically got our list of target words that we've added. These of course could be opened from a predefined set of words in a file. And before we start, we're going to also add those target words to our journal. Like so. Again, we keep adding resources to our journal as we go along, and at the end of this presentation we'll review the journal and see the kind of content that we've now produced and made available for both the teacher and the students. So now we have our keyword monitoring target word set, we can choose to enable monitoring, either for one or for all students in the class. So let's monitor the activity, and you'll see that the window here now is waiting for information to come through from those student PCs. You can now see on the screen that Alexander has started working on his essay and has begun typing that the sun is in the middle of our solar system. The sun has been highlighted as one of the target words, and therefore we've increased the target count by the value 1. All of the students can therefore undertake their essays, and very quickly and easily a teacher can keep a quick eye on which students are covering the key topic areas for their defined subject, and of course had we listed some inappropriate words, these too would be flagged at any time. As you'd expect, all of the keywords monitoring that is undertaken can be recorded to a history file, so if perhaps a student is using another application and typing inappropriate content or messages to another student, this will be recorded and can be used as a source for follow-up after the lesson. Okay, we've covered some of our control and monitoring features within NetSupport School. Our ability to monitor the student screens and interact with each student, our ability to monitor and control internet usage, application usage, printer usage, the usage of devices, USB, CD-ROM, as well as monitoring the keyboard input of each and every student. Now let's move our attention to some of the tools that are available within NetSupport School to actually assess student learning and understanding within the classroom. Okay, so our first available feature for gauging student understanding and assessment in the classroom is our quick survey mode. As you can see, we have the main survey dialog at the bottom left, and we have a results window on the right hand side. Now we can choose to manually type in a question and a set of responses, or if we've pre-prepared them, we can pull up a question here: what is the largest planet in our solar system? And define our list of responses, and then simply send that to the class. As soon as we send, you'll see our update here shows the flags and advises to us that we're now waiting for 16 responses back from the classroom students. If we look on a student computer, we'll see this is the dialog that is presented to the student. The student can select their responses and submit that information. As you can see, as if by magic, as the students respond, our survey results automatically update in the lower left-hand corner, and alongside each student icon we get a quick visual indicator as to which responses they came with. When we're finished, we can save or print our survey results, we can show the correct results back to our students on their PCs, and of course we can also make sure that we add those results into our student journal so that each of the students and the teacher have a record of the survey that was undertaken and of course what the responses were. Okay, moving on from our quick survey mode, for more detailed and engaging assessment within the classroom, NetSupport School 11 includes a new question and answer mode. Question and answer mode provides a quick and easy mechanism for a teacher to deliver both individual, group and peer assessment within the classroom, whilst also ensuring that all students remain engaged throughout the class. Let's have a look at some of the options. Our starting point is a range of questions types that are available when we start a lesson. So we can first and foremost ask a question and record the responses based on who's quickest to answer, a quick way to engage students. We can use a potluck mode where students will be selected randomly within the class and then requested to answer the question. This is a good way of removing any student claims that the teacher has favouritism, and also ensures that students who would perhaps traditionally stay quiet at the back of the classroom recognise they may well be the next person to get picked on the list. We can do an enter the answer mode where the teacher can type in an answer, ask the students for that information and automatically mark their responses. And of course, to add a layer of enthusiasm, we can also apply some team modes. Let's start with a simple one, a first to answer question. So, first options we're provided are we going to give the students some thinking time before they're able to respond? So my question that I'm going to ask, and it's important to note verbally, so as a teacher I don't have any pre-planning to do, I'm going to ask a question about the solar system and I'm going to ensure that my students have 10 seconds thinking time, and once it's done, do I want to set a time limit before the students reply? Well, in this case here we'll say no, because for my demonstration it's going to be me responding on behalf of the students. And we can also set, utilising the latest standards in classroom questioning, whether we want to bounce the questions onto a number of additional students. The idea of basketball questioning is that if we ask one student to respond, we can in effect quickly assess their understanding by bouncing the question to another student, asking them for their feedback, bouncing on to another, and gradually developing the question topic as we progress. The other advantage of using this verbal approach to questioning allows a teacher to tailor the question depending on the ability of the next recipient as they pass through the class. So for this one here, let's say we're going to bounce, and we'll include 3 students to automatically bounce to. We'll say OK, and we're ready to go. I'm now going to ask the students the question, OK, so which is the largest planet in the solar system? And the point I asked that, the thinking time expires, and I'm now waiting for my students to respond. Okay, we've cut out a couple of steps there whilst I've whizzed around the different student computers, but as you can see now, we've got a number of our students who've responded, and Alexander was first to answer and is therefore marked with a 1, followed by Ditta, John, and then other students. So, having asked Alex the question, Alex has responded with the question, and the first thing I'm going to do is choose whether his answer is correct or not, or of course if I wanted to, I could move on to the next round. So in the case of Alexander, he was correct in answering in terms of Jupiter, and we've set the system by default, and we can configure the feature to award Alex a star. The question's now bounced to Ditta, and my next question to Ditta is, OK Ditta, if that's the largest, which is the smallest? Having asked Ditta the question, he was incorrect, so we now bounce to John and ask John a follow-up question. If we're not sure at this point whether everybody else in the classroom is likely to understand this topic, what we can also do is enable our peer assess mode, these thumbs up and thumb down indicators here. And when we request peer assess, we're basically going to ask all of the students to tell us themselves whether they think the individual was right or wrong. If we look quickly on one of the students' PCs, you'll see during peer assess mode, they've now been asked, do you think John Naylor is correct in his answer? And the student can peer assess by simply saying yes or no. In this case, Alex thinks he is correct. Jumping back to the teacher's PC, you'll see as each of the students respond with their peer assessment marks, they will either give a big green thumbs up or a red thumbs down, indicating whether they do or don't agree with the comments that's been passed by John. So that's the basic concept of a quick peer assessment. The teacher's asked a verbal question, he's bounced that question to a number of students, allowing them to respond, and at any given time he's allowed the whole class to peer assess the responses given by an individual student. And of course we can move to round 2, and in round 2 we can carry on the same question type, or if the student's already answered, as we'll see on the screen below here, they'll be excluded from the next round because we've set those settings within our configuration. We'll go on to talk about some of the configuration options in a second. Let's cancel that for a minute and look back at some of the other question types. So we've got a potluck mode, and a potluck mode, as we explained, if we end that question type, simply allows us to randomly select 1, 2 or 3 computers. Let's select one and see what happens. And you'll see the computer has cycled around the classroom and has randomly selected Alex for us to ask the next question. Alex, well done, you're right. We're going to give you another point. We'll move on to another question, and you'll see that this time Andy's been selected. Andy, you were right too, so let's continue the lesson. This time it's Mick, and unfortunately Mick got his question wrong. As you can see, a very quick and simple way to keep student attention and also ensure that we're able to record those students that actually achieve the correct answers during the assessment mode. We talked about some of the rewards, and it's worth noting in our question and answer options we can assign whether a student gets a reward when they answer correctly, and also if they're excluded from the next round of questioning. Similarly, if they answer incorrectly, whether they lose a reward or whether they're excluded from further questions, and by default how many students are displayed in our results listing back on the student PCs. Okay, another question type we haven't touched yet is our enter and answer mode. But let's look at it in the context of a team enter and answer question so we can cover both features at the same time. The teacher is going to have a preset thinking time and is now going to work with the students as teams. Again, at any point from these dialogues we can access those options that we talked about earlier. Let's say OK, and we now either have the option to assign teams randomly or to allow students to choose their team. This could be quite useful if we want to list within our own school the names of each house or team that the students are familiar with. For the sake of this, let's just simply make it a case of having 2 randomly assigned teams. When we say OK, you'll see we have the name Team 1 and Team 2, and we have 2 different colours. We can click at any point and change the colour, or of course the name for each team. Let's say OK. And because this is an enter and answer, the teacher is now going to enter this information in advance to a question. Now the question we're going to ask is, what is 6 times 6? So of course our answer is 36. You'll note the answer box is treated like a secure password field, so that if a teacher is using an overhead projector or an interactive whiteboard whilst running the tutor program, the students aren't going to be able to see in advance the information. We also have a case sensitive option. Most frequently, the enter and answer question type can be used for basic maths, times tables, and also could be used for spelling tests for students within the classroom. Now we've got our answer, let's hit go, and you'll see our teams have automatically been assigned, and we've got our thinking time. So now I ask the class, OK class, what is 6 times 6? I now wait for the students to respond with their answers. As you can see on the screen, as the students are responding, either right or wrong, points are being awarded for each student who got it correct. It's telling us how long it took them to answer, and of course we have their indicators as to which team they're in. Let's also take a quick look at what a student sees from their point of view. Okay, so the student can see which team they're in, they can see the accumulated points, so the 3 members of the blue team have got it right so far, 2 of the red team. And we've also chosen within our standard setup to show the top 3, the fastest 3 students to answer in our list. This list could show all of the students in the class, but as you can probably appreciate, in some classrooms it's preferable to just show the top achievers rather than highlight those that came near the bottom of the list. So similarly, we're just showing the top 3 people who got the question right and wrong within our main view window as well. And of course, jumping back to the teacher, we can choose whether we want to apply sound effects both on our machine and on the student's machine to enhance that game show style feel to it, or whether we want to now reset or progress to another question. So all the time our teams are being rewarded, we've got a record of our rewards that are being stored as part of our lesson details, and the students are fully engaged within that learning process. Okay, so having covered the new Q&A mode, question and answer mode, the final methodology available within NetSupport School for testing and quizzing our students, engaging understanding, is our testing console. Now there are 2 parts to the testing console, the designer for creating questions and tests, and then of course the player where the students can actually interact and respond to the tests. Let's take a quick look at the test designer. On your screen you'll see we have the main test designer, but it's broken down into 2 main areas, the questions and exams. In essence, we create collections of questions, and then each of these questions can be selected and added to an individual exam. So within our top view here, you'll see we've got some science questions on the solar system, which is rather handy at the moment. And one of the question types here is asking the students to view a picture and then respond by advising whether each of these statements are correct. Is Mars closer to the Sun than Earth? Is Mercury the nearest planet to the Sun? And so on. We also have the ability to provide a labelling question where text can be dragged and dropped to identify which planet we're actually recognising on the system. And we also have the ability again to simply view a picture, look at the picture and the details, and then as a result drag and drop the correct answers in the correct order. So where are these in terms of distance from the Sun? And within the product here, you'll see we have all sorts of different question types. So we can have drop down combo lists for history and selecting different dates, as well as labeling, images, true or false, multiple choice, and so on. Once we have our questions that we've defined within the system, we can then create a new test. And as we can see as our example here, we've created a test. We've decided there's no time limit with this test here, and you'll see we have a list of individual questions that we've produced that we've added to this particular test. Each question can be assigned a topic, a subject, and where appropriate the tester can also define levels for the questions. And as you'd expect, these can be created and edited offline away from the main NetSupport School tutor component using our standalone test designer. Resources can also be exported and imported and shared between teachers. So once we've created our very simple test, and I appreciate this is a very fast-paced summary of the key features, we can then publish our test. And if we jump back to NetSupport School, you'll see we have a testing console, and here we have all of our students selected, and we can simply choose to pull up our example test, which has got 18 questions. We can either preview the test, or we can now progress to actually sending the test through to all of our students. Now when that happens, you'll see we have a list of our students here. The test is now being sent to all those students. We've got a quick progress indicator. Those students are all ready, and we can now choose to either force them to log in, or we can start the test on all the machines. Let's say start the test, and you'll see the test is now running with all those students, and we have a progress indicator. We've skipped forward slightly, and we can see that the first student, Alexander here, is currently working through his questions, and in real time we can see which questions he's got correct and which questions he's got wrong. And of course, if this was a classroom full of individuals, they would all be answering their questions, and as a teacher we'd be able to see exactly what they were doing. We've done that. Let's just either pause the test, or perhaps where we need to we can start again, and then let's just stop the test for now, and we'll make sure that we've therefore got a quick opportunity now to report on the results. When I click on my report, you'll see I have a class summary that's presented. Let's maximize that for a second, which shows me the scores achieved by our students. And of course, for our example, only Alexander started finishing the questions, so he answered 8 and has scored a total of 13 points. We can now drill down to individually to Alexander. We can see for each question where he got his scores, and we can also run down through all the questions that he answered, seeing exactly what he answered and where he scored his points. And we can also show that report and the results back to the student so they can see exactly how well they achieved as well. Finally, using our common theme, we can also send the results to our journal as well. So let's close that down, and we'll exit our test, as we've now already covered the 3 main ways of assessing and quizzing within the classroom. Having covered some of the testing and assessment features within NetSupport School, let's have a look at some of the other features and utilities that are also available to us. Throughout the demonstration so far, we've been adding content to our student and teacher journals. And you'll see on the top menu, we have a journal menu, currently for Mr. Kingsley in room 1, and you'll see that we have the ability to add new chapters, quickly add new content, notes, websites, word lists, as well as, have we just completed them, surveys and other results. And we have the ability to view our journal. So let's take a quick look at what our journal looks like at the moment. And you'll see on the screen we have our main journal, and below that we have our page summary. So in our journal view, we've got our lesson details, we've got our summary of approved websites we added earlier, we've got our note from the teacher, don't not forget to research and find a diagram of the solar system, You'll see on page 2 the teacher's created a new chapter, the planets, and has provided a couple of images, screenshots that he's added to the journal to be shared. We've got our target words being added from when we did our keyword monitoring. We've got our survey results that have been added from when we polled the class about our planets. And we've also got all of our test results that have been entered. In addition to this, the student could have also added their own notes and information throughout the lesson when appropriate to them. So we have our journal. The journal can also be customised with our school logo at the top of the journal, and we can create new chapters and topics as the year progresses. The key relevance of the journal is that having conducted a lesson and provided our students with all the key information they need, they now have a document they can take away for home study and they can reference as part of their ongoing schoolwork. In addition, students that were absent now have a record that can be given to them by the teacher showing them all the content and information that was assessed during the lesson. In the latest version of School, the journal's been extended to also allow a teacher to synchronise any missing content directly from the teacher's journal to any existing student journals. So if a student's missed one chapter, that can be automatically added back to their journal. Finally, for some schools, the journal is also used as part of an ongoing assessment report for a particular subject, and we can also support within our journal function the ability to peer assess. It's a very simple concept. The teacher can ask students to swap places on their computer. A student can view another student's journal and can add a peer assess comment which will identify who peer assessed and any feedback that student wishes to give on the content of the other student's journal. Again, a really important and unique feature within NetSupport School to ensure that students always have access to all of the key information on their system. So that's our journal. We've covered most of the main features as we walk along, but let's have a look at some of the simpler features in the classroom. We have the ability to chat with our students, send them a message, send an audible message, announce, type a quick message direct from the toolbar, or create preset messages that can be used on a regular basis. Reminder class, only 5 minutes till the end of the lesson, make sure you save your work. We also have the ability, we've seen our application and internet metering, a quick launch bar where we can add quick launch items directly into this, so one click and the teacher can launch key applications or websites. We also have the ability to create lesson plans, and lesson plans allow a teacher to take all of the key features within NetSupport School and add them into their plan with preset timings to give the teacher a quick visual reminder of what's next or what's coming up over the 40-minute or hour-long lesson. Now, of course, as a teacher, I may be using this on my PC. I may also be using this with an interactive whiteboard. So if I'm using NetSupport School with interactive whiteboard, you'll notice that when I minimize the tutor, toolbar remains at the top of the screen, giving me quick access to key features. To add notes to my journal, chat, announce, show my screen, lock the student screens, blank screens, and block internet access, as well as a summary of who I am. These are designed to be of a sufficient size that on an interactive whiteboard a teacher can use their finger or pointer to interact with NetSupport School, and back it comes. Now when we talk about toolbars, another unique aspect within NetSupport School, namely the student toolbar, which can be enabled or disabled using this quick link here. If we jump to a student PC, we're able to see at the top of the student's desktop is the student toolbar. We have the student's name, current date and time, any rewards that have been given to the student, those rewards were assigned during our Q&A mode, details of the current lesson, and along the top here we have access to key information. So we have access to any resources that have been provided for the student, our lesson objectives, cover the solar system, learn about the planets, and included in there we can show any expected outcomes, something that's critical for modern teaching standards, and show whether there is any active device control, keyboard monitoring, instant messenger monitoring, printer control, application control, and internet as well. We also have a student journal, so where they can access their own journal, adding notes, chat, request help, and most importantly, the ability to quickly make a request for assistance. A student can enter their message, help sir, and they can choose to alert the teacher that they need help, urgent help, or their work's being complete. And when they alert, you'll see the student's toolbar changes colour. The objective now is that not only has the teacher been indicated on their screen that this student needs assistance, but if the teacher is walking around the room, they can see visually which students need help without the need for a student to put their hand up and identify themselves in the classroom that they need assistance. Background, I've just applied some internet restrictions that mean that only approved sites are available to the student, and you'll see now the student icon has a little tick next to it, and if we click, you'll see the students are now given a list of the sites that are available to them. Again, it may seem a simple point, but without an effective way of communicating to students, they have no way of knowing which websites are available to them. They have no way of understanding why their prints aren't being received. They have no way of quickly making communication with a teacher. And for those less technically able, having one-click access to common resources or their USB memory stick provides a very simple and effective way to ensure that all students get the most out of the classroom. For the teacher's console, and finally you'll also notice we have a tutor assistant. A tutor assistant allows us to add an approved iPad or Android device that can run our freely available and downloadable NetSupport Tutor Assistant. The tutor assistant will connect to the school tutor and allow teachers or teaching assistants in the classroom to be able to be mobile around the room, but at the same time monitor and interact with all the students direct from their tablet or smartphone. Okay, that concludes our tour of the main features within NetSupport School version 11. We will separately provide a tour covering the technician's console, the included additional component available for technicians that will allow them to monitor, manage and control all devices across the school network, as well as provide a separate video tour highlighting some of the configuration options that are available within the NetSupport School product. That concludes our tour of the NetSupport School tutor program and its key functionality. As I hope you're aware, you can download a free 30-day evaluation copy for use on up to 50 computers from www.netsupportschool.com. And of course, if you'd like a more one-to-one or specialised presentation on some of the key features of the product, then please contact your NetSupport account manager. Thank you for your time.